Imagine a food delivery robot is driving down a sidewalk. It's heavy, filled with groceries, and moving at a fast walking speed. Suddenly, a child trips and falls directly into its path. The robot's sensors see the child instantly. It starts to slow down, but half a second later, it hits the child anyways. In a normal accident, we'd look at the driver. We'd ask if they were distracted or if they were being reckless. If the brakes failed, we'd blame the manufacturer. But what if the robot's code functioned exactly as intended and the outcome was still fatal? If an autonomous robot causes a serious accident tomorrow, who goes to jail? The engineers? The owner? Or no one? Today we're looking at why modern robots create a responsibility gap that our legal system and our society isn't ready for. This isn't just some future hypothetical problem. We already live alongside machines that can seriously injure or kill people, and we have for decades. Cranes, forklifts, industrial presses, these machines hurt people every day, and society has ways to figure out who to blame. But things are changing. Technology has advanced to the point where robots are working on their own without a human looking over their shoulder every minute. When something goes wrong and someone gets hurt, who's expected to take the blame? Before machines were fully autonomous, that was usually pretty simple to figure out. In 2018, a self-driving test vehicle owned by Uber was operating in a public road in Tempe, Arizona. The car was driving in autonomous mode on a normal city street that Uber had spent tons of time practicing extensively on. A human safety driver was sitting in the driver's seat to monitor the system and to take over in the case of an emergency. At 9:58 p.m., a pedestrian named Elaine Herzberg crossed the road while pushing her bike. The vehicle's cameras detected something in the roadway 6 seconds before impact, but it struggled to figure out what it was seeing. First, it looked at her and identified an unknown object, then a vehicle, and then finally a bicycle. And the system actually recognized the need for an emergency brake about 1 second before impact. But Uber had turned off the automatic emergency braking system to prevent erratic vehicle behavior during testing. While this was happening, the safety driver was looking down at her phone and didn't notice in time. The vehicle struck Elaine and she later died in the hospital. When news of the crash came out, many people assumed that this would be a turning point, that Uber would be held criminally responsible, and that autonomous vehicle testing would be facing some serious legal consequences. But that's not exactly what happened. Uber wasn't criminally charged, the engineers who built the system weren't charged. Instead, the safety driver, who prosecutors argued wasn't properly watching the road, was the only one who faced any criminal consequence. After the crash, Uber paused its autonomous vehicle testing before eventually resuming several months later under much stricter conditions. So even in a case involving advanced automation, responsibility still fell on a human, not on the software and not on the robot. And to understand why the safety driver was the only person to face any serious consequences, you have to understand how responsibility usually works when machines hurt people. When accidents involving machines happen today, they're usually pretty cut and dry. Investigators ask a few routine questions. Was the machine defective? Was it used improperly? Or did somebody ignore some safety rules? Those questions tend to cover most cases, and as a result, figuring out who's responsible is generally pretty straightforward. Sometimes it's the operator. Someone used the machine incorrectly or ignored safety guidelines. Other times it's the employer, who provided inadequate training, unsafe working conditions, or pressured employees to cut corners. And in some cases, it's the manufacturer who sold a defective product or failed to fully address a faulty safety mechanism. Even when nobody goes to jail, there's usually a clear conclusion about who was at fault. And the system works because traditional machines are predictable. They behave the same way every time, and if something goes wrong, you can usually trace it back to a specific cause. There's a clean path from cause to responsibility to consequence. But this method of placing blame doesn't work as well for autonomous robots. There's nobody actively controlling them, so decision-making is handled internally by the robot itself. We're already seeing this with fully driverless taxis like Waymo, operating without anybody behind the wheel. And in the near future, we'll see more factory robots like Boston Dynamics Atlas that are designed to work completely independently too. But things can still go wrong, and people can and will still get hurt, even when these robots appear to be working completely as designed. They might encounter a situation they haven't seen before, or misunderstand their environments and make a mistake. And this leads to a deeper problem. Modern autonomous machines don't operate on simple if-then rules. They rely on machine learning models, neural networks, systems that are trained on tons of data to recognize patterns and then make decisions. That means there often isn't a single line of code that you can point to and say, this is where it went wrong. Even the engineers who built the system might not be able to fully explain why it behaved the way it did in the moment. And that creates a serious problem for our existing responsibility framework. If we can't explain why the system acted the way it did, how do we decide whether its behavior was negligent or simply unpredictable? So when a fully autonomous system injures somebody, we're left asking a much harder question. Is this machine just a product, something we treat like defective equipment, where responsibility automatically falls on the manufacturer? Or is it more like an independent agent, where responsibility shifts to whoever owns and deploys it, like how we treat animals or other potentially dangerous property? The Uber case never fully tested this problem, because there was still a human in the loop. But fully autonomous systems remove that option. So when there's no clear human decision to point to, who's responsible when things go wrong? Pretty soon this will become a reality, and when it does, this is probably what will happen. Obviously, a robot can't be arrested. You could wipe its computer and memory, but that wouldn't really feel like justice, would it? Instead, the process will start with a lot of uncertainty. Regulators will open investigations, companies will pause deployments, and everyone involved will try to understand exactly what happened. And rather than a single clear ruling, responsibility will be spread out through civil lawsuits, settlements, insurance payouts, all without any formal admission of guilt. At the same time, regulators will respond with temporary bans, slower approvals, and restrictions for everyone working in that space. So whenever the next major autonomous accident happens, you can expect friction. Things will slow down, autonomy will be rolled back, and systems will be limited to reduce liability. That friction exists because we can't yet agree on a simple answer to one fundamental question. When an autonomous system causes a serious accident and hurts somebody, who's actually responsible? Is it the engineers who designed it, the company who deployed it, or the owner who gave it its task? Right now, there isn't a clean answer. Our methods of assigning blame were built for humans, and for tools that behave in predictable ways. But as machines become more autonomous, fewer people are directly involved in each moment-to-moment decision, and it's a lot harder to draw a line from cause to blame. But the consequences don't disappear. People can still get hurt, and someone will still have to answer for it. That's why this question matters. The future of robotics isn't just about what machines are capable of. It's about how we decide who's accountable when those machines fail. Because as robots become more and more autonomous, the questions people ask will start to change, from whether they can work to who we blame when accidents happen.